Thanks very much, Mr. Anita Kapur, Mr. Kaushal Srivastava, for joining us. The fine print is really in the taxes, and that's what really affects the lives of everybody. Ms. Kapur, I'll begin by talking to you about the corporate tax that has been reduced, and it's down by about 5% over the next 4 years. Help us explain the rationale of doing it over the next 4 years. What kind of exemptions will go when, and also what is going to be the tax for this year itself?
The corporate tax rate is going to come down by 5% over the next 4 years. This year, the corporate tax rate remains the same, 30%. Now, some exemptions have sunset clauses as it is. There are some exemptions which have no sunset clause. So, the minister has announced a roadmap that over the next 4 years, as he brings down the tax rate, he will also phase out these exemptions. So, if you are going to get your tax rates down, and considering the needs that you have for your social expenditure to which you are committed, you have to bring down exemptions. Exemptions clutter up the tax code.
That's right.
Exemptions are prone to abuse, misuse, and exemptions lead to a lot of litigation, because there are always interpretational issues with exemption provisions. There is some kind of discretionary power available, because exemptions are structured in a manner as to allow verification of certain facts. So, a good tax reform always is premised on to have lower tax rates, but with no exemptions.
Fair point. Mr. Srivastava, as far as indirect taxes are concerned, one of the biggest disappointments this year is that even though as per new CSO figures, manufacturing has done quite well, indirect taxes, we just haven't seen any indirect taxes grow at all. So what really has been the problem with indirect taxes? Is the economy growing? Is it not growing? And if it is been growing, as CSO tells us, why does it not get reflected in our indirect taxes?
In the indirect taxes, on the manufacturing side, the industrial index of production has been around, I think so, 1.2% or so. And the central excise growth is also in keeping with that, with that rate. And in central excise, we had a stimulus package going on for automobile sector, capital goods and their parts, which was continuing up to very recently. We lost some revenue there, and it also led to some credit accumulation, which is also affecting, even after the exemption has ended, then also it is affecting the tax payments. So I think the manufacturing excise revenue trends are in keeping with the...
So you don't buy the CSO's argument that manufacturing actually grew by 7%. That's what the CSO tells us. You didn't see any evidence of that on the ground.
Meaning the industrial index of production, that has
that
grown
is
by
true.
1.
We entirely buy that.
Yeah.
IIP doesn't reflect it, but CSO tells us manufacturing actually grew.
Now that we'll have to go to the sector specific factors, and then we could possibly comment on that. But there was some specific, one was that this stimulus package, and then it has been about 1-2%. So that much of growth we are showing, and now because of the fuel increase, excise duty increase, we are showing about 5% growth, which will go up more in the coming days.
Right. You know, if I look at the gross tax revenue numbers, last year we actually saw a decline of about 9% from the budget estimates. But despite that, I think the finance minister has given you a very onerous task of raising it by 16%. Now, where is he going to get it from? Is he going to look at Anita, or is he going to look at you? And are we going to get that 16%? Especially when your nominal rate of growth has come down to 11.4 as against 13.4. So you have this very ironical situation where your nominal GDP growth is coming down, but your gross tax revenue is hugely growing, increasing 16% as against 9%. So 16 plus 9, 25% growth is what you were looking for in direct taxes. So who will he look at direct taxes or indirect taxes?
No, we have a tough challenge ahead with the BE figures which have been given to us. But then CSO tells us that we are going to grow at 8 to 8.5%. There would be some inflation, and We also hope that the compliance climate would improve. We are going to be very tough on tax evaders.
That's right.
We are bringing in a new act, particularly to deal with concealment of assets abroad. And we hope that our administrative measures also will improve compliance and the kind of message that we are giving to our taxpayers, that we are the facilitators, we'll help you every way to do your compliance, and if you do not comply, we have enough legislative measures to which we would resort to improve compliance. So economic growth, improved compliance, we hope we'll meet up the challenge.
Ma'am, if I may ask you a question and draw your attention to what the budget has done as far as the FIIs are concerned. I mean, doing away with MAT on FIIs and then deferring GAR also for 2 years because the tax department is not so prepared. Let's go one by one. Doing away with MAT on FIIs. Is there a sense that we are bending over backwards when it comes to foreign investors? Like Mythili was pointing out a little earlier. You know, why woo them so much? This is a tax regime. These are our laws. Come and do business here if you're willing to meet all of that. Instead, the sense that one gets is that you're willing to do all it takes to get them here and change laws for them.
No, we've not actually changed any rules for them. It is a rationalization measure. The fact is that MAT is structured in a manner that you pay tax today under MAT. Next year, if you are in a normal profit, you will get credit for that.
That's right.
Now, what we have done is, because the FIIs were eligible for a 15% tax rate on their short-term gains, on which they pay STT, and the MAT rate is 18.5%.
That's right.
So they'll never be able to get credit for that. So the MAT scheme is conceptualized in a manner that you pay now, and over the next 10 years, when you have normal profits, you'll be able to get a set-off. FIIs can't get set-off. So this is an anomaly which we have addressed by this change in law.
I have one more question on GAR before I throw it to Mythili for the indirect taxes. You defer it again by 2 years. Is there a sense that GAR may actually eventually be buried and never see the light of day? The training hasn't happened, the taxman isn't prepared, and for something like GAR, you really need officers who are well trained. Otherwise, the consequences can be quite grave there.
We didn't say that our officers were not trained. The fact of the matter is that general anti-avoidance rule is part of every modern tax administration.
Yes.
The only reservations were that some of the aspects of the GAR still needed some resolution. In the sense, industry was raising some issues, some concerns, which we thought were valid, and we needed to address those. One of those concerns was the retrospectivity of GAR, because it was kicking in for transactions which had happened prior to GAR actually coming into implementation.
Right. Now we
addressed that part. Second part, we hope to address over this period that we've got. Plus, under the BEPS project, that is the Base Erosion Profit Shifting project, which is being led by G20, and OECD is helping there, and India is a very active participant there.
Right.
Internationally accepted principles on GAR are being developed. There will be international consensus. So the industry would see for itself whether our GAR is aligned to the BEPS principles that come out of the GAR study that they are doing. So it was both these pushes, that let's wait and see what emerges out of that, plus the issues which have already been identified, which we need to address. They were the reason that it was decided to push GAR by 2 more years.
Will I be too blatant to ask you which are the issues that industry has raised that still needs to be addressed in GAR?
There are some issues like interplay of GAR with the specific anti-avoidance rule, the SAR rules. There are issues of treaty override. When you have a limitation of benefit clause in a treaty and then you have a GAR under your domestic law, how do they interplay? There are some issues of those kind which we really need to deliberate upon. It's not that the principle has been abandoned. we stand by the principle, and every tax administration would like to stand by that principle.
Absolutely. Mr. Srivastava, what is the rate of growth for indirect tax for this year that you have budgeted?
It's 19%.
19%.
Yeah.
And what was it last year?
Last year the budgeted growth initially was 25.8%.
And what did we achieve?
We have achieved 7.4 up as of now.
Okay.
And we hope to achieve about 9.23%.
So that's a tall order that you have.
On the indirect taxes side, I think so. It's quite challenging, but I think so. It's entirely achievable.
Okay.
Of course, there are some assumptions, meaning the one factor is on account of the increase in the excise duty on fuels, which is because of the meaning coming down of the international crude prices. So, if we are able to continue with this duty structure on fuel, that is a major factor. On the service tax side, there are certain measures which we have taken this time for where there is increase of widening of the tax base, pruning of certain exemptions. So, on service tax, we hope to do much better in the coming year. So, on the whole, and compliance enforcement would be better. We are proceeding for using IT in a big way. So, with all these measures, we are quite, I think so, I should say we are confident that we should be able to, the target which has been given for next year is entirely achievable.
The service tax increased to 14%. Does that not go against the idea of a common revenue neutral rate under GST?
No, as you would appreciate, the current rate on both central excise service tax was 12%.
Yes.
But on the goods aspect, states levy a VAT. But on the services, presently no tax is levied by the states. And under GST, they will be levying tax, both center and states will be levying service tax, will be levying GST on supply of services. So, the rate on services under the GST regime will be slightly more than present.
Okay.
So, we didn't want that it should be an abrupt increase of a very significant amount. So, gradual, to make that process gradual, this has been increased by 2%.
As far as GST is concerned, apart from the problem of the constitutional amendment, etc., how ready are you on the ground for GST, or will we again be told that the department is not ready, so we're deferring GST, as in the case of gaar?
I don't think so that situation is, it will not happen, because we are working on simultaneously several, whichever is on various aspects. Because there are several committees set up by the empowered committee to look into different aspects of business processes, of the GST structure, of the exemptions which will be there, and for making the GST laws under the GST regime. The work under all these committees, two committees have already submitted their report, and the other two committees, the work is going on in full swing. And simultaneously on the IT network, which will be which will provide the backbone for the GST tax law, tax regime, their work is also going on. It's progressing at a very, I think so, satisfactory pace. So we will definitely be in a position to implement it by 1/4/16.
While we position to implement that, you still have to arrive on rates. I have a quick question to ask on you on the central compensation that hasn't been budgeted for. Will you explain us why that hasn't happened? Is there going to be a supplementary for that? The CST compensation, sir.
Yeah, it has not been budgeted presently, but meaning the center is committed to provide for that. So that will be taken care of maybe by during the course of the year itself.
On the direct tax front, Is there a slight sense that our tax structures become a little bit more regressive rather than progressive at a time when advanced countries are talking of raising the tax slab, rate on the highest slab? Because both the medical insurance as well as the NPS contributions, they're clearly going to be enjoyed by the upper middle class, not even the middle class. So if we really wanted to make tax progressive as it should be, maybe there was more of a case for raising the exemption limit at the lower end, or something like that. Of course, over the 1 crore, yes, you have a cess in lieu of wealth tax. But is there a sense that the giveaways from the minister have all been, towards the middle and the upper middle class?
I wouldn't agree with that assessment, because if you see the structure of the tax laws and the kind of fiscal space the minister had, he had given 50,000 slab adjustment in the budget last year itself. Then he gave 50,000 extra for the house building loans, interest on house building loans. He's given you 50,000 extra in NPS this budget. And I don't think that 50,000 extra NPS is really targeted to the very rich taxpayers. He wants people to save, and he wants people to move to finance their own pensions. So it's an incentive to save. It has a cost now to the revenue, but he's agreed to bear that cost. Then the transport allowance exemption limit that he's announced, that is also there. 800 rupees is going to 1600 rupees per month. He's given benefits on your medical insurance, and his sensitivity towards the really senior. We were getting feedback that they can't buy insurance policies because nobody is willing to give an insurance, medical insurance, to the people who are 80 plus. He's agreed to give them 30,000 off without even an insurance. So they can take off their expenditure, the very senior. So there are a lot of benefits within the fiscal constraints that he had for what I would call not really the rich. The rich are being made to pay more. They have to pay 2% surcharge if they have income above 1 crore.
Completely run out of time here with a very wonderful chat with both of you, but we've got to wrap this. Thanks very much for being with us, Ms. Kapur and Mr. Srivastava.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.